everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast, and we are back with another romantic reading wrap-up for September. And I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and Bree is here.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, how are you been doing?
Good. I cannot believe it's the end of September.
I know.
What the heck? What is
Yeah,
time?
I know. Well, but then I was thinking August feels like it was a million years ago. Like
It
it
did.
feels like so. So I guess they say, the days drag, the weeks fly by.
Yeah.
Or so.
And the summer was like super short and very fast at the same time. So, I mean, we're almost to October. There's
And October might just kill me. It's gonna be so. I'm taking 2 trips. I have all the prep work for Countdown to Christmas coming up, and
over
everything else going
22nd.
on.
Oh my God.
So, yeah. So we finally got at least the initial slate schedule from Hallmark this last week. We still are missing basically 2 months of announcements, but at least it was something, which is good. Still waiting on Lifetime.
We will take what we can get. I was
Yeah.
seeing people online like talking about, are they going to cancel Countdown to Christmas? I'm like, no way. They would not do that. People were getting nervous.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. I mean, I can't believe how long they waited to just do an initial announcement. My only hope with the delays is that hopefully that means they're not going to be all kinds of changes, because usually when they announce in July, there's like a lot of times plots will be completely different by the time the movies come out. Like they'll have all kinds of errors and issues, and so hopefully at least maybe that will be better. But it's been rough as a podcaster.
Well, I
Yeah.
just hope that in the end, it's all worth it. I feel like it's absolutely going to be. I'm hoping we have some really good stuff. I'm excited. Like,
Mhm.
let's go. Let's bring it on, October.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be crazy, but it's gonna be fun, and hopefully I'll be able to get some reading in somewhere in there. I'll do my best.
That's like the hardest thing because Christmas romance market season is like September through December. I mean, we got titles even
Yeah.
in
Oh yeah.
August. So it's the balancing of reading and watching Hallmark Christmas movies. It's a task.
Yeah, it's a tough job,
Yeah.
but we're here for it.
But we're here for it.
Yeah. Well, this month we decided to talk about the Magnolia Sisters by Alys Murray.
Yes.
And Alys is a friend of the podcast, and she's been on a bunch of times. We love her. And I had read this book previously, but I did read it again. And the summary I wrote up is: Harper is a dedicated tulip farmer who's trying to keep her family farm afloat when one day she meets big shot Luke Martin. Luke is very close to his sister Annie, and he agrees to work at the farm to hopefully convince Harper to allow the farm to be used for the venue for his sister's wedding. As they work together, they realize they might have more in common than they thought, and sparks fly.
Yeah.
So, what did you think overall of this book?
I loved it. I did. I thought it was a really, just different spin on workplace romance. I mean, essentially, they end up working together.
Yeah.
I loved the like enemies to lovers aspect to it. I mean, which I don't even know if I would necessarily say enemies, but like strong disdain for to
Hmm.
lovers.
Yeah.
But I just love also, I mean, like you said in the summary, there are two people that have so much more in common than they realize. They're both very driven by family. Family plays such a big part in this book. It's such a big theme in this book. They
Hmm.
wouldn't even, their paths wouldn't have crossed if it wasn't for familial stuff. So yeah, I thought it was really, really wonderful. What did you think?
I mean, I loved it. I loved it the first time that I read it, and I loved it the second time. I think that she does such a good job of building the tension between
Yes.
the couple, and it's this palpable chemistry and this tension between the two, between Harper and Luke, that is just very well done.
Yeah, it was
Mhm.
very intense. And you know what? Like one of those things that I look for is I want to feel as though there is no way these two people are going to get together, but I'm going to stick for the ride to see how
Uh-huh.
they pull it off. And that's really how it felt. I mean, in the beginning, for anyone who hasn't listened, um, Luke is he basically approaches her because he wants to have his sister's wedding. His sister
Mhm.
wants to have the wedding on her farm, and he offends her.
Yeah.
So she's like, "Nope, I'm having none of this." So and she's really hard on him. I mean, he's not a bad guy. He just offended her, and
Yeah.
yeah, she's really hard on him. But then what Elise does is you see the moment where she realizes maybe he's not such a bad guy and maybe I'm being a little hard on him. And that's really when things start to change. But there's
Mhm.
so many other things going on that like I was so fixated on them that I didn't realize. I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but
Mhm.
his sister, who she is engaged to, causes a little bit of conflict. Like, it was a lot going on,
Mhm.
but it was all just woven together perfectly, I think.
Well, and also from the very beginning, they are super attracted to each other, and they
Yeah,
can't deny it, even though they hate each other, which is perfect. That's exactly what you want.
yes.
Yeah, we had the great opportunity to talk to Bryn Donovan this last month. I hope everybody listened to that interview. It was a lot of fun, and we talked about how the essential part of a romance is that it has a happy ending. So that these people are going to get together, obviously, but it's all about the journey of how you get there. That
Mhm.
makes it really fun.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and this was a good journey.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Luke in doing all that doing all that farm work. It's pretty good.
Yes. And I mean,
Eh,
he just did it, He did
uh-huh.
it, and it was once we learn the backstory, really, like the situation between, him and his sister, how they grew up, and I felt as though he this was his last chance to really take care of his sister. Because he's
Mhm.
been in that, like, fatherly role for her, and now she's getting married, he's gonna have to hand the responsibility off to someone, so it just he really read as someone that was driven to do you know, be able to make the last big thing that he can do for her as perfect as possible, and there's something so swoon-worthy about
Yeah.
that.
It really is very attractive when you have, like, a thoughtful, kind, uh, man as your lead. Like, yes, sometimes you like sort of the more roguish, the rakes, as we like to say, you like them too,
The
but there is
cinnamon
something.
roll, yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's very good. And I totally agree with you that the part of a great romance is getting to that point where even though because it's the genre, that they are going to get together, but it seems impossible. And I mean that's the whole thing with once Lizzie refuses Darcy, and you think there's no way, how's this going to work? And then it's just boom from there.
Right, exactly.
And I think they do a good job with she does a good job with Luke and Harper here. And I mean, at times I felt kind of sorry for him having to do all that work at the farm. That sounds like torture to me.
Yeah, and then it felt like that, and then at the end, when they're, like, back at the farm and she's working, I think that's when it really clicked for me.
Hmm.
He's essentially doing stuff that she does every day.
Hmm.
You're just reading
Yeah.
it his perspective, and he's somebody that never has had to do that before.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem a little bit hard to believe that they couldn't find a place to have this wedding at this
Yeah,
farm, that there wouldn't be a barn or I don't know, someplace, but you kind of have to accept that for the conceit to work.
yeah. And I liked that she was the one from, like, the farming background, and it wasn't him, He's more of the well, he's like a self-made man at the same time too, and he comes from,
Mhm.
a
Hollywood.
yeah, he comes from a really not the best background, so you appreciate where he is and where he's gotten himself to, but
Mhm.
as far as, like, getting down and dirty, that's her. She's the one that does that, and I really liked that role reversal.
Yeah. Yeah, our friend Anne, her favorite story trope is a Hollywood celebrity fall in love with a Hollywood celebrity in real life, kind of a thing,
Yeah.
for Hallmark movies. So whenever I see that in a book or in a movie, I'm always like, "Oh, I gotta recommend this to Anne." She's like but yeah, I what did you think of Annie as a character?
I
Did you
liked
like her?
Annie. Yeah,
Mm.
I did. I don't know, Annie, I mean, the further into the story, you realize that she is part of some conflict that she didn't realize that she was part of,
Mhm.
but she just I don't know, she kinda brought the funness to the story, I thought.
Mhm.
What did
Yeah,
you
I
think?
mean, sometimes I felt like she's a little naive, but she grew as a character, and then in a later book, she has her own romance in
Mhm.
in one of the future books, and it was really cute. Her and like the sleepovers and everything like that, like winning over somebody like Harper,
Yeah.
who's not like a girly girl. So that was kind of fun, and uh, I mean, I would love to have a friend and have sleepovers and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I loved that. And
It
I
was
think with her, I mean, because she did sometimes read a little childish,
uh-huh.
but I think with their background and then him stepping up and really taking care of them, it kind of made sense in the same way. Like, you hear a
Yeah,
lot of stories where they would have just she would have read as this character that just grew up entirely too fast, but Luke's the one that did the growing up. So it kind of made sense a little bit, and who knows, maybe like once I get to her actual book, she'll read a little bit different, but she's used to her brother going to, like, the ends of the earth to take care of her, so, it
yeah.
seems like in a way she read to me how she should have read in a way.
Mhm. Yeah. And what did you think of the sisters and their relationship? Like mainly Harper and Rose.
Oh gosh. Okay, Rose is the sister with the big scene in the book,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Okay. You know, I think it was a good showing of how just I mean, it felt like a realistic sisterly relationship. Not all
Yeah.
sisters, like me and my sisters are really close, but that's not the case for a lot of sisters. So I like
Mhm.
seeing, something a little bit different, but man, that one scene in the book, and I don't want to spoil it. If y'all have not read it, listeners, you should absolutely be reading this book. But there's a scene towards the end of the book where Rose confronts Harper, and
Mhm.
it just I don't know, it really
It
I'm
was
like,
good.
later, it really is messing with me because you feel Rose's pain, but it just also kinda kickstarts Harper to go in this direction that she doesn't really wanna go to, but she's so loyal to her family, like, coming back to this theme of how important family is, like, you will go and ruin something that you really want to appease your family. And I just felt like, "Man, Rose, that's a really messed up situation that you just put your sister in."
Yeah, I think that she needed somebody to be honest with her and tell her what was going on because she's such a stubborn character, Harper,
Mhm.
that and hard-headed that she needs somebody to be like, "You're being stupid
Yeah.
here." which I can definitely appreciate as somebody I have 3 sisters, so I can
Yeah.
understand. I definitely can. So I always like to read a section, a little quote from the book that we're featuring, and I really liked the whole barn dance scene. I think that dancing scenes are usually very swoon worthy, and I don't know if that's partly because I'm like the worst dancer in the world. So I
And I've
can live,
never been to a dance, but yeah, they're so
yeah,
intimate, yeah, so
I
sweet.
can live vicariously through fictional characters dancing. But I liked this when she says, and they say, "Well," she said, breathless, "that's quite convenient because there's nothing I'd rather be doing than dancing with you." There it was, a declaration from her slyly smiling lips. He'd thought that would satisfy him, but now that he knew the sight of him or the light touch of his hands didn't disgust her, he wanted more. "That's not something I ever thought I'd hear from you. Don't gloat." Her fingers lightly brushed the back of his neck, just enough to give him the shivers. "Just dance with me."
Yeah,
That was good.
yeah. And I mean, we see it in Hallmark, right? Whenever they like decorate the barns for either like fall harvest or
Mhm,
countdown to Christmas, I just was imagining beautiful lights in the farm and
mhm.
tables and all of that. It's so
And
sweet.
and I don't know if I just get too starved for intimacy in these types of books/movies, but I love, like, little moments like that where, her fingers lightly brushed the back of his neck just enough to give him the shivers. "Just dance with me." I love stuff like that. Oh, when you get that palpable sense of touch and feel, and it's like the littlest things can be so intimate and
Yes.
have that connection and just build. Like, I think sometimes it's more sexy, for lack of a better word, to have
Yes.
those, like, little moments versus, like, actual, you know,
Yeah.
steam, spice, as we like to say on this. I think
Yeah.
it's really great.
It's still, in a way, sexual tension without bringing in the actual sex, and
Mhm,
I think that, yes, those little moments of touch and just conversation or the way that they look at each other, or their hands may, touch like, brace each other or whatever, they're so romantic, and it doesn't even
mhm,
have to go there, so it leaves
yeah,
something to the imagination.
mhm, yeah, yeah, and I think the chemistry is really strong in this book between Luke and Harper. I think they do a good job with that, and it's hard sometimes when you do enemies to lovers, you have to make that switch
Yeah,
at just the right time because you don't want the characters to end up unlikable,
right.
because they're being so mean to each other. You have to kind of make it work, which
Yeah.
is tricky. It's harder than people realize. I've read and seen lots of bad examples of that. But it was also nice because you had this sibling chemistry, and I think that's also really key in enemies to lovers because you have to have people around the characters to, again, kind of keep them likable, because if
Yeah,
they're just sort of terrible to everybody, then you're not going to be invested. Like, it's a fine line.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, having the siblings there, I think, humanizes them a little
Yeah.
bit and helps you see, okay, this is why you're being a jerk to this person. But
Mhm.
yeah, and with this one, like I said, with Harper, you see that moment where she's like that switch happens, and it's like a breath of fresh air. Like finally, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's like when Lizzie reads Darcy's letter. I mean, that's the big moment of
Yeah, yeah.
as far as trope time, in this one, we have enemies to lovers, as we said.
Mhm,
And then there's a little bit of past loves with Harper and Tom,
mhm,
and Tom is the one engaged to Annie in the story. And so you've got kind of a little bit of that dynamic going on as well. And you also have small town romance and workplace romance.
mhm.
So got lots of different tropes going on, and it all, I think, works really well together. And so if y'all haven't read the Magnolia Sisters, I really think that our audience will like this book. It's very fun.
Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
it could be a Hallmark movie.
Oh,
Just
yeah. Yeah. No spice at all. No.
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 I think it could be a fall harvest movie.
Oh,
Just
yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Or even a summer movie. I feel like either one, I think it would work, and, the only I'm not sure why it's called the Magnolia Sisters, I forget that, but, it's it's a really fun little book, and I enjoyed the whole series. I think she did a very good job, so check it out. And we'll have a link to our affiliate link for Amazon. If anybody wants to purchase the book, you can check it out down there. But what would you give 1 to 5 crowns? What would you give this book?
I gave it a 4.5.
Hmm.
What'd you do?
Yeah, I can't remember if it was a 4 or 4.5 on Goodreads, but yeah, definitely at least a 4 for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Go read it, guys.
Yes.
I mean, like you said, it could easily be a summer read, but I think it could be a fall read as
Yeah.
well. It's really
It's perfect for September, really.
cozy. Yeah, it is like the perfect September read. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, in fact, Brie liked it so much that, like, as soon as she finished, she's on Twitter, like, tagging me and everything, like, "This was the best book." I loved it so much. Yeah, but that's good if it's there. Well, we'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies Podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies. Let's
talk about the other reading that we've been doing. I only have 3 books this time, but one of mine was a big book. It's classic, so it was long. So that's why. And so my first one is called Evelina by Fanny Burney. This is the long one. And the reason why I was interested in reading this book is because a lot of people think that Fanny Burney or Frances Burney, it was a huge influence on Jane Austen and particularly Evelina. And you read the book and you can see definitely some influences on Jane Austen in the book. It's not on that level of Jane Austen, but I still enjoyed it. It's about this woman named Evelina, this young woman, and she is kind of adopted into court, even though they don't know who her parents are. She is kind of presented as being a lady, and there's various suitors who come her way, particularly Lord Orville and Sir Willoughby, who, of course, you will see Willoughby in Sense and Sensibility. They not the same character, but a similar character. He's kind of a rake. And the whole book is written through letters. It's epistolary, which is not my favorite, but it's done pretty well. And Evelina is a very naive character, very young, and probably most similar to Catherine in Northanger Abbey, as far as if you're talking Jane Austen characters. But yeah, I'm glad that I read it. I could definitely see some of the connections there, and it's always I love reading Regency and reading classic literature, so it was fun to kind of check that one off my list.
Yeah. I mean, people always talk about like Jane Austen, the first romance writer, and
Hmm.
I was listening to something and this like professor somewhere was like Jane Austen obviously had to have read something, you
Yeah.
know. She probably read somebody that was writing romance
Mhm.
as well. So yeah, I love that you did that. I mean, for anyone listening, there in October, there's on YouTube, the BookTube community. There's a group of people that they do Victober. So in October, they all read like Victorian literature. So if you're a classics
Mhm.
person, look into that. Find you, put you a TBR together. I know the group read is an Elizabeth Gaskell collection of short
Oh,
stories. So yeah, I'm thinking I may do a Wilkie Collins. We'll see. But classic literature is not really my thing, but I want to try.
I love Elizabeth Gaskell so much. I might even like North and South better than Pride and Prejudice. I just love that book. It's so great. And if you're not up for reading the book, the miniseries is very good that they did with Richard Armitage for North and South, and I think you could make a movie based on Evelina, I think, or a series. I think maybe you might want to make her a little bit less naive, like a little bit. I don't know. I just think you might want to modernize her character just a little bit. She's kind of she just kind of goes along with whatever people are sort of telling her uh, about people and about she believes she's very naive character. But I think you could do a fun take on it. But yeah, if you haven't seen North and South, it is so good.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet, but
Oh, you
I've
gotta
read
see
one
it.
of her short stories, and I think it's called Sylvia's Lovers. My friend Kate, that's like one of her favorites by her.
Mhm,
Um, but I know that the group read is her Gothic Tales. I think it's a collection of like 4 or 5 short stories in one.
mhm. But
Um,
yeah, I mean, Elizabeth Gaskell, her female characters are so modern. You would think that they were written now. Like you would think it was a Regency writer writing right now because I just always so impressed with how strong and confident and like empowered they are. And uh, I mean, her two main books are North and South and Wives and Daughters. She didn't
I
finish
read
Wives.
Wives and Daughters. It's so eerie.
I,
It just ends, and
yeah,
right? And it's so sad.
I know, but I love the ending in the miniseries in that one as well. It's so good. It's totally a quarantine friendly ending, I guess you might say, because she has the the I forget what they say. She has some kind of flu or whatever, and so they can't be near each other, but they declare their love and socially distanced. It's really good. It's very, very, very good. So I just kind of pretend that that's the ending in the book because I love it so much.
Yeah, my
But
friend rereads it literally every year, and I'm like, "Girl,
yeah,
this book's like over 500 pages. Like,
yeah.
who rereads?"
I I used to read all of the Jane Austen, the main, 5 books. I used to read those every year before I started like podcasting. And I used to do NaNoWriMo every year. I did it 4 or 5 times, but it's impossible to do it in November, the National Novel Writing Month challenge, but I love doing it. It's
Yeah,
very fun. But I just don't have the time, but
I
I
think
I
I'm
love the
gonna
whole
try it
challenges.
this year. I think I'm gonna try.
Ooh, you should. Yeah, if any of our listeners are doing NaNoWriMo, let us know. We
Yeah,
wanna
sure.
support you
We
and,
will.
hear about your books. But yeah, so that was my first. It was my main book because it's like I said, it's very long. It's
Mm.
over 16 hours on Audible. So, but what about you? What's your first?
So my first was I literally finished this yesterday, so we're gonna talk about it because it's fresh. The Skeleton Takes a Bow by Lee Perry, and it is a cozy mystery. And I do a book club with 2 of my girlfriends online, and what we do is we pick a theme. So this month's theme was school because it's back to school here in North America. And we'll just each read whatever book we find that has school in it, and then we'll meet up and talk about it. And I had read the first book in the series last month, and I knew that the main like amateur sleuth is a professor. So I was like, sure, I'm sure it's going to take place in school. And it was all types of school. So we get themes like scenes of her like being a professor, adjunct professor, like living that life, and kind of discussions with her and high school teachers, and like professors looking down on them and high school teachers looking down on professors. And so a little bit of that world. And then her daughter's in high school and she's actually doing like a school play. And I mean, it's a little bit of like, I don't want to say paranormal, magical realism, because they do have an actual skeleton that talks. And the daughter's using him for the play of Hamlet. And she leaves him in her locker one day and he overhears a murder. And so it's so good. It's like I said, it's book 2. It's another book that I think is perfect for like September or October. It's set during the fall. And then the third book is actually like a Halloween themed one. So I'm excited to read that one next month. But yeah, if you're a cozy mystery fan and you want something a little bit different, I really enjoyed the first 2 books in this series. So that's The Skeleton Takes a Bow by Lee Perry.
It's a good title.
Yeah.
It's very, very enticing. The Skeleton Takes a Bow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fun. So my second book is not a romance. This was for my book club. That was the same as Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. And I really think that Frederick Bachman might be the best currently writing like author as far as his craft of particularly with his characters. And I have just loved every single book of his that I have read. And particularly A Man Called Ove. I loved that book so much. The character growth. He is an unlikable character, but you come to understand him and feel for his journey. I don't know. I loved that book. He has another one called it's something like my grandma asked me to tell you she's sorry or something like that. Anyway, that I really loved that. And then this Anxious People, it was so good. This book read like a kind of a one room play, where everything takes place in one room, kind of like 12 Angry Men kind of thing. And it's about these people are looking at this apartment that and to rent this apartment, and there's a bank robber ends up taking them hostage. And so you have this group of strangers that are all forced to be together, right? And so then you start to learn more about each person's backstory, including the robber. And it was great. I loved all of the characters. I thought that it was managed to be funny and sweet and heartfelt, and I pretty much everybody in the book club liked it. There was one other girl who agreed with me that it was outstanding, and then a couple others that were like, "Oh, it was good," and it's a perfect book if you are doing a book club to talk about because it has so much in the characters, and it's not like a plot heavy book, but it just has a lot of things that are sort of discussed about these people and their lives. So it's a really good one for a book club. But it's not a sad book or a depressing book by any means. In fact, there's this one couple who's always fighting over furniture and IKEA furniture. which is just really funny. And they at one point they order pizza for the hostages, and they the back and forth about what pizza to order made me laugh. Because that's totally my family, because we have like vegans and gluten free, and by the end you're just like, we just order the pizza.
Yeah.
um, but I just really like his writing. I think he is a very talented writer. So yeah. Have you
Well,
ever read any of him, Frederick
I
Bachman?
haven't, but I have seen, what is it? Is it A Man Called Ove?
Yeah. There's a Swedish film, A Man Called Ove, that is excellent, very good. He's Swedish, Frederick Bachman, and then there's going to be a new version with Tom Hanks, which seems like a very weird choice to me. Because I mean, I would have picked somebody like Jack Nicholson or somebody like that, like more of a curmudgeonly person, like
I
Tom
know,
Hanks.
I think Jack Nicholson has Alzheimer's, though.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
somebody with just more of a curmudgeonly personality, like I would have
Yeah, you
picked.
think
But
of
then
Tom
Tom Hanks, he's like everyone's favorite person.
Right, you think of, like, all the wonderful romantic comedies, or think of him getting off the elevator in Sleepless in Seattle,
Yeah,
like
that's right. But he's a good actor, so I'm sure he'll do good. But yeah, that was surprising when I heard they were picking him. But I absolutely loved that book. You initially, I mean, it's almost kind of like a Christmas Carol kind of idea in the sense of your Scrooge character who comes into contact with all these different people, and you get to sort of learn his backstory of why he is the way he is. And I don't know, I just loved it. And I that is a definitely a favorite kind of trope of mine. The sort of grumpy old person. Like I love Up, the Pixar's Up, and I love Gran Torino. Clint Eastwood, he would be great as in Man Called Ove. But anyway, I think that if you haven't read Friedrich Bachmann, you should definitely give him a shot because I think he's just very talented.
Yeah.
Mm. So, what is your next?
The next one that I read was a short story collection, and it's A Place Like Home by Rosamund Pilcher. And this was my first by her. I've heard her name for years. I don't really know what kind of books. It looks like she wrote maybe a lot of modern classic women's fiction type of stories, maybe
Mm.
some mysteries in there. I'm not quite sure. Listeners, if you're a fan of hers, hit me up and tell me what I should read by her next because this was fantastic. It's hard to really say what the stories, I don't want to say they're all romance. A lot of them are like just more women's fiction, but just an example, one of the stories in it, the heroine goes through a breakup at the very beginning of the story and she leaves town, like goes home kind of thing. And she's at this party a couple of pages in. I mean, she's like really kind of heartbroken over it at first, obviously. And then she's at this party later on, and the guy is there with this new girl. And I mean, by this point, she's met someone else too, and they've been kind of hanging out, but she's still grappling with that loss, that heartache from the last relationship. So she's not looking too much into it, but she sees, the ex there with this new young girl, like younger than her kind of deal. And she just has this moment where she realizes, like, I feel sorry for you. Like, you're this aspiring Peter Pan that wants to stay young by getting these girls that just get younger and younger every time you like seek out a new one, and you're just never going to be happy and you're going to be alone. And I like loved it. It was so powerful, and it was just to see what she could do with these short stories was just wonderful. So again,
Mm.
y'all, it's A Place Like Home by Rosamund Pilcher. I This will definitely not be my last by her. I thought it was fantastic.
Sometimes I like reading short stories even better than reading the full novel because
Yeah,
there's just something satisfying about this.
it's like you're finishing something.
Yeah. Especially if it's an anthology with a theme. So you get to see, oh, here's like 5 different authors and their take on this same idea.
Yes.
I think that's so fun. I love that.
What's your next one?
Okay, my last one is Freaky Friday by Mary Rogers, and I think people might not realize that that all the Freaky Friday movies are based on a book. And the reason why I read this is because my friend Marissa Serafini and we just recorded last night our ranking of the Freaky Friday movies. And there's actually 4 different Freaky Friday movies, both both TV, movie, and feature films. And we had a great time doing that. It was a lot of fun, and so I thought it would be fun to read the book along with watching all four of the movies. And the book is definitely different than the movies because it focuses almost exclusively on the daughter. The mother turning into her daughter is very like a background character, but this the main emphasis of the book is the daughter having to live the life of her mother and realize that her mother is, working a lot harder and has things a lot harder than she thought. And so it's interesting kind of on that level. And it's not long. This was like a 3-hour audible, so it's really a short little novella more than a book. And But it's interesting more as a novelty of like where this all started
Yeah.
for the Freaky Friday kind of things. But yeah, it's so I got to read that.
Okay. Well,
Hmm.
I had one more too, and my last one was A Family for the Firefighter by Jacqueline Thomas, and I loved this one as well. The main character, well, the hero in the book is a local firefighter on this it's the Polk Islands, like so islands off of like South Carolina, Georgia, that area. And he lost his wife and child in a car accident. And then the heroine at the beginning of the book, her daughter is basically kidnapped from daycare by her dad. Like she didn't, they're separated, they're divorced. He hadn't like told her like, hey, I'm going to pick up the baby. He just went and got her and she gets a notification kind of thing. And he dies. I mean, he like is driving down the road, something happens, he hits a tree, the baby is fine. And it was like two people that like he experienced grief, she, but they were already divorced and really didn't have a good marriage, but still grieving that loss and having to experience like trying to move on, and the like kind of the meanness his family puts towards her, like it's a lot. And the hero was raised by his aunt, and she's like showing signs of Alzheimer's. And of course, people struggle with admitting that that's what they think that is when like a loved one starts showing those signs. And oh my gosh, the aunt, she said something. So there was this guy that like always had a crush on her as like when they were back in teenage years. I mean, she's like 50s, 60s at this point. And he asked her to marry him. Like, you're the girl that I've always wanted. I don't care that you have this. Like, I want to be with you until I can't be with you anymore, kind of thing. And she says something, and she says, sometimes I just forget things and I don't know why. And I was driving and crying, you guys, because my grandfather that had Alzheimer's said basically the same thing to my mom before, she took him to figure out what it was. Like, sometimes I forget things. And it was just so spot on. So yeah, it's a really, it's a heartwarming romance. So there's no sex on the page whatsoever. It's really sweet. It's really
Mm,
beautiful exploration into grief and just moving on. And yeah, I loved it. It was so good. So that's A
that
Family
sounds
for the
good.
Firefighter, y'all, by Jacqueline Thomas.
That sounds really good. So, if you're listening, let us know what you've been reading. We would love to hear your thoughts. If you've read any of the books that we talked about, put it in the comment section or on Twitter. We'd love to hear. We also are on Goodreads, so check that out. And next month, we are starting our Christmas reading.
Yay!
Yeah. It's beginning, even though it's October, we are reading On Christmas Avenue by Jenny Baird, and that is one of the new Hallmark Christmas books this year. And so that's going to be really fun to check out. So there'll be a link for that in the description as well. And so if you want to if you want to
Read
read
it
along
with
with us.
us.
Yes, that would be really fun. And we do also have an interview with Ginny in that I'll put a link in the description. And we've also we've done a lot with Alys Murray. So if you want to listen to any of those, you should check out in the description. We'll have all that information. So lots of good stuff going on. We're excited for October. And Bree, where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram at Falling for Romance, and I co-host the Categorically Romance podcast.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. And make sure you're following us at Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all over social media. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That would help us out so much. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our merch store, which has tons of fun Hallmark inspired designs. We're going to have some new designs for the holidays. Make sure you take a look over there. We also have our patron group where we have watch alongs and our Facebook group, and it's really fun and cheap to join. So check that out. And thanks so much. It's always so much fun to talk books with you, Bree.
Yes.
And we'll look forward to next month.
Bye, everybody. Read with
Bye.
read with us.